Yes, we will be out there commissioning and kicking up on that. It's also happening today.
Yeah, so still on the FCT, they also like to remind us time and again that you have got to do something to security situation. The FCT Police Command is asking residents to always support security agencies with credible intelligence. So they do have some emergency lines that you can call. Yes, yeah, I know. The Public Complaints Bureau, that's the PCB desk, also has a number there. Then if you can't, well, there are other numbers you could try and see if you could just have that or copy or screenshot, whatever you have to do. But I know they also have heard the commands, beg your pardon, the demand for short codes. So questions to NCC, the police. What are they doing? Why are they not collaborating? Why do we not have those short codes? So it is possible, and we should have it. So in the meantime, memorize this one. You could have it in good time. It could come in very handy to you. Ayo.
Well, yes, you're very correct, Chamberlain, on that one. And by the way, I think it's only a matter of someone asking the question, can we get a short code? Lagos, I think, has its own short code, and Nigeria has its short code. So I think it's only a matter of asking, and then pretty sure it's something that's easy. Now, of course, coming up today on Business Morning is going to be this question. How do we rescue the Naira? I'm not sure. Maybe a few people don't want it to come down, but hey, the situations where the dollar improves against the Naira and the price of Akara jumps in the market, whichever part of the country it is. Okay, how does CBN play a role in that? That's also up later on in the program this morning at the top of the next hour. Chamberlain.
All of that we're going to be bringing to you here today on the program, so just keep it locked here on Sunrise Daily. So let's go ahead and take you through some of the dailies this morning. And we'll start with Blueprint newspaper here today. It was shocking when the chairman of the EFCC, talking about his 100 days in office, did speak about this one. EFCC uncovers religious sect laundering. Look at that. 7 billion naira for terrorists. What are we doing to ourselves in this country? So they said that they met some break wall in terms of how to do something about that moving forward, but eventually they pushed back, and they're hoping to keep going because they say this cannot be allowed to happen or keep happening. They have to stem the tide, as they say it. So that's a big lead on the front page of Blueprint paper today.
This Nigeria has a different story, but has to do with the Naira as well. Money. Senate summoned CBN's governor on state of the economy. That's what this Nigeria is leading with. Naira, how is it going? What would the Senate be able to accomplish with the call of a CBN governor as the lead story on the front page of this Nigeria?
Well, Business Day is also talking business, of course, talking Naira. And then the lead story is no less concerning. Anger, misery across Nigeria as Naira freefall worsens. CBN's new FX rules seen boosting Naira dollar supply. Who's making that assurance? You find the details continue on the inside pages. Page 2 is where you find the story on the rider this morning. Anger, misery rise across Nigeria as Naira freefall worsens. That's Business Day's lead story today.
Equally looks at a similar scenario. CBN clamps down on banks, pegs trade assets in Forex. So, and then you also see some of the riders there, which highlights a lot of those. So we'll be coming to that in just a moment. But that's the big lead, the front page of Vanguard here today.
Well, the Daily Independent has something related to that first one you started with, Chamberlain. Religious sect laundering money for terrorists, coming from the EFCC's chairman. Yes, indeed, it was. When that broke, it was indeed a breaking news out there. That's it from Daily Independent.
Well, you know the story. We've been hammering on insecurity. Well, that's what the Leadership newspaper leads with today. And pretty much talking about insecurity and a decision taken by northern governors. No negotiation with bandits. Northwest governors vow. That's the lead story on the front page of the Leadership newspaper today. That story is on page 4. Zamfara launches 2,600 community guards. A unitary police force can't secure Nigeria, says General Guzou. Poverty, criminality in North need urgent attention. That's coming from the Vice President. Details of that on page 4. That's the lead story of the Leadership newspaper today.
Well, yes, indeed, guys. Much as we can see some efforts or activities on the part of the CBN, Vanguard highlights that, several other dailies too. Even this Nigeria, which you highlighted, doing something about the free fall of the naira. So it is hugely important that a lot of the challenges and complaints out there. In fact, several people wonder, what is the government doing about institutions that are charging, almost replacing the naira with the dollar? Because they say, how could we be in the same country and schools are charging fees in dollars? Rents are charging in dollars, and they wonder, what is that supposed to be allowed? Isn't that a flagrant violation of the laws? Is government aware of this? Are they looking the other way? What is going on? Because they think all of this contributes in one way or the other to putting pressure on the dollar, much as they're trying to see how we could ensure production and manufacturing gets back on stream like since yesterday. But with all of these people demanding Forex for these activities, what's the kind of got more pressure? So something needs to be done, needs to be addressed.
No, Chamberlain, what's going on here reminds me of a picture we saw one time of the situation in Mozambique where there were, for everything you wanted to do, because if you're carrying the local currency, you practically need a wheelbarrow to be able to move money, to buy little items as much as a loaf of bread. You have to
Zimbabwe, yeah.
Yeah, was it Zimbabwe? Yeah. So everybody's now looking for the US dollar because it's easier to carry. That's the situation here. Well, I do know that we had a guest here one day who said, until we stop dollarizing the Nigerian market, so the politicians, the governors, and all those in public office need to stop dollarizing the system. And he made an allegation. He asserted that many times at the end of the month, what you find is go to the Forex market, you won't see any cash because many people will go in there just to buy up, to mop up whatever it is they can find. So indeed, the CBN needs to do something about that. But that other matter also about the EFCC discovery speaks a lot to what's going on in the system. And the attempts to mop up excess cash in circulation, again, CBN needs to wake up, and how are they going to handle that so that there's not too much of cash in circulation yet? There's still cash in circulation, so that we don't begin to have the situation we had where you go to the POS, you want to get some cash, or to the ATM, and there's no cash. That happened around the December period.
So clearly, all eyes will be on the CBN and those who are managing the economy to find out, are your policies working? So the results out there is all we need to know whether or not they're working.
Well, you're very correct, Jimlin. One of the things that has, to be clear, this is not the first time we were talking about the free fall of the naira. I just saw a report, just checking, as far back as 2001. And hey, how far back does this go really, guys? I mean, in the 80s, we were talking about the naira more pricey, more valuable than the dollar, just in the 80s, right? And that should give us some reasons as to exactly what is happening and why is this happening. And yes, I agree, the CBN has its job cut out for it, but it has to be collaboratively done. What are the things hindering us from producing? There are a number of people, specialists, economists, experts that have continued to say, until Nigeria begins to produce, become a producing nation, we may not see the kind of significant appreciation of the naira that we want to see. So back to every single one of us, everyone in business. What are the things that we need to do? What are the issues that the federal government needs to address urgently in order for the naira, for Nigeria's currency to appreciate? Until those things are done, I don't know if we're ever going to get out of this rut. But hey, as you said, the CBN has its job cut out for it. So if the CBN has to collaborate, call everyone to a round table and let's discuss how to make this better. I love the story that we found on the front page of one of the papers earlier, on the front page of the Leadership newspaper, in particular, talking about insecurity, and when the Northwest governors have vowed that there will be no negotiation with bandits. That's very cheering to hear. front page, lead story, leadership newspaper, no negotiation with bandits, cheering to hear, and very, very applaudable as well. But how about the necessary collaboration? How about ensuring that the local government levels are active and functional? How about, we need governors to come out and tell us what they are doing at the local government levels to ensure that the security councils in each of the local governments are active, because these are the front lines. The community development associations, are they active? Are they well mobilized to do what is needful? We just heard recently that Plateau State is considering a joint task force, JTF, with the military to help in ensuring security of the people so that everyone else can sleep with their two eyes closed. Granted, wonderful, amazing. But how do we deal with the issues right there at the local government levels? It's an issue of concern that we cannot run away from. Granted, no negotiations with bandits, agreed. All the people that have made comments in public and saying, we know that the so persons are behind these things, fine. Can we call them to a round table as well and ensure that the needful is done? That's my take on the front page of the leadership newspaper this morning. Kimberly and Nyota.
Big tech wasn't really here. What have they seen in the past 10 years, which is making all of them want to put their HQ here?
If you're a business that sees itself growing global, we'll definitely need some sort of like boosts. We need to tap into those existing networks that these big tech companies do provide.
Is there a downside to big investment in Africa? Okay. It's a tricky question.
We want to be like Amazon, we want to be like Google. Like, this is not, we are not looking to sort of be just another player.
For me, big tech is something highly controversial. I see the value of it, but I also see that Africans should stop playing second fiddle to some of these organizations and have the confidence to start building our own technology.
You've seen how we are using the limited resources we have to solve real problems. They've seen indigenous tech startups achieving things that took them years to figure out.
I'm Ifeoma Williams, your guide on this transformative journey.
Welcome to Transform Her, the first of its kind on-air coaching program exclusively on Channels Television.
I define a product as that perfect thing that people are ready to part with their money for.
In a male-dominated environment, being required to uphold a position of leadership.
The good, the bad, the ugly, they all pull together to make you this woman and this person that you can be.
Join us in shaping the future of African female leadership as we provide practical resources for entrepreneurs and aspiring C-suite leaders. Every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. West African time, we bring you expert interviews, transformative coaching, and the tools you need for exponential personal and professional growth. Transform Her, because it's time to unlock your potential and lead with purpose.
The Catholic Archdiocese of Abuja, through the Cardinal Onayekon Foundation for Peace, announces the birthday celebration and book presentation of His Eminence, John Cardinal Onayekon, CON. The book, entitled Religion for Peace, Post-Retirement Reflections of Cardinal John Onayekon on Interfaith Dialogue, will be presented under the distinguished chairmanship of the Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, GCON. Date, 1st of February 2024 in Abuja, time 11 a.m. prompt. General Yakubu Gowon, retired GCFR, Grand Patron of the Day. Host, Chief Lumo Lulu Breaks. RSVP 090-6600-6000 and 080-2244-3542.
Hi. Now, let me tell you about Safari Valley Eco Resort, the first of its kind in West Africa. Upon your arrival, you are introduced to your butler, who plans your itinerary.
We were surrounded by wildlife from the moment we entered the eco park.
So many activities, all in the same premises. Visit the gym or the stables. They have it all. At my break, I'm able to practice my putting.
We also went fishing on a man-made canal. Our tour guides taught us so much about the wildlife and how to interact with them.
They used only electric vehicles here. This creates a serene environment. I'm told it's over 1,000 acres. My cabin here sits on 2 acres with a large terrace space overlooking my private swimming pool. Now this is royalty. They have their own farms, thousands of fruit trees. I can also have my lunch here at the waterfall. Quite a beautiful place you have here.
Visit Safari Valley Eco Resort in Ghana, bringing you closer to nature.
Taste.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, indeed, that is what we're starting our conversation with here for this segment, the Values Charter. So we've got the Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation, Alhaji Mohammed Idris Malagi. Good morning, and thank you for coming on the program today, sir.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Good to be here.
Yeah, well, we've seen this Values Charter, Nigeria's Values Charter. Sounds really good when we hear that. It just... Lots of people have talked about the national ethos. Who are we? What do we stand for? What is it that defines us as a people when we get out there? So several questions has been asked over the years. But now this Nigeria's Values Charter, we've seen some of the highlights in terms of what this can achieve. What made you come up with this in the first place?
Well, thank you again. Good to be here. We all know, and I've said it here the last time I came, that we've seen gradual erosion of our values as a nation. Those values that were bequeathed to us by our founding fathers seem to be going away. And it's becoming so worrisome to the extent that immorality and lack of patriotism appear to be taking center stage for people in this country, for those in government and those outside government. And so all the issues around this country are issues that have to do with lack of patriotism, lack of belief in the value system that we should have as a country. And so we thought that it is important we all come back again, sit down, look at where we've gotten it wrong, retrace our steps, so that Nigeria can recover those lost values that made us a great nation once upon a time. We want to go back to those values. We want to see that Nigeria begins to take its rightful place as a responsible country once again, so that people will respect us more. Nigerians and the children that are also coming will now know that they have a country that they will all be proud of. And perhaps, just perhaps, this may also be part of the solution, the Japa syndrome.
Okay, but I see it's broken down into the two aspects here.
Yeah.
The first is the 7 core promises of the Nigerian state to the citizens. Then you have the 7 commitments of the citizens to the Nigerian state. So the first of the 7 core promises of the Nigerian state to citizens, you talk about equality, democracy, entrepreneurship and employment, peace and security, inclusivity, freedom and justice, meritocracy. And then where we talk about the commitments of citizens to Nigerian state, discipline, duty of care, tolerance and respect, leadership and patriotism, transparency and accountability and integrity, family values and environmental awareness. Now, how do you plan to approach this part, first from the core promises of the Nigerian state to the citizens? Because over the years, many have said, look, the leaders, political class, they have never taken Nigerians seriously, and as such, people don't feel any need whatsoever to have or to be held accountable or to even be beholden or anything whatsoever to the state as a result of this.
Absolutely, and you are right in that direction. You see, for every citizen to believe in his country or in his nation, there must be what is called the social contract that connects him to his country. Now, it is that social contract that this seeks to revive, that seeks to establish. If you want to be a good Nigerian, you also expect the Nigeria of your dream. You also expect that the Nigeria gives you that sense of pride, that sense of belonging, that thing that makes you feel proud to be a Nigerian. And that is why we broke this down into 2 categories. First, there must be something that the citizen of Nigeria looks up to from his country. Social security, for example, equality, and meritocracy, all those things you talked about. It is important that if you want to behave as a Nigerian, you expect that Nigeria, for example, secures you. You don't want to come, but nobody wants to live in fear. Nobody wants to live, in this environment that you feel that maybe something can happen the next hour or the next day, and then you feel like relocating to another place. So that social contract that connects the citizen and the country itself. Those are those 2 things we want to bring together. There is the side that the government has to do, the government represented by elected and appointed leaders. You are expected to, for example, give back to the people that have elected you or to the people that have appointed you that sense of pride. You should behave in a normal way. You should behave, and you know that the Nigeria expect that if you go there, there will be no corruption. You should provide equality. You should provide security. You should ensure that this country gives you that sense of pride. Now, it is that will now be what will ginger you to now also give back to your own country. If it is only one way, if government or the elected leaders or elected representatives or appointed representatives just expect their countrymen or women to behave in a particular direction without them also leading by example, then trust has broken down. And once trust breaks down, then of course you know that the fidelity that exists between the citizen and his country is gone.
But the challenge you are going to face with this is how are we going to ensure that the political class subscribe to this? Because we know that before you know what's going on now, when it's election time, the kind of messages, the diatribes, the division, they take advantage of our fault lines and they drive a wedge in and then to score cheap political points.
Yeah.
How would you solve that with this?
Well, this is why we're bringing this up now. And this is not something, the difference this time around is that we want to persuade and engage Nigerians elected and those that are being led to behave in this particular set of direction. If you say, for example, you are elected, you are a councillor, for example, or a chairman of local government, and you feel that you can just take away the commonwealth of your people and go away with it, do you know that maybe a month before you were elected, you didn't even have a good car, you didn't have a good house? 3 months into your election or appointment, you are suddenly swimming in wealth? Of course, that won't earn you respect. People want to know where you're coming from. The trajectory of an individual is very important. So what we are saying is that those who are elected will be persuaded, and that's why we say the president will have to come together. This is now something that all of us will have to agree upon. It's not something that is going to be forced down the throat of anybody. And that's why we say the president will come up, launch this thing, agree upon it. I said it here in the past that we have been talking about economic revival. Yeah. We've been talking about security. No one has sat down to look at this connection between Nigeria and its citizens. What do you expect the citizen to do? What does the citizen expect Nigeria to do for him? If you take an American, for example, he's so proud of his country because for any American killed anywhere in the world, for example, every American feels hurt. Why is it so? Where is that sense of patriotism? People need to know that those that they have elected are doing the right thing. They are giving them what they say they will give them. Trust will be established. And therefore, when these elected leaders now ask the citizens to also behave in a particular set, in a particular direction, they also now follow. But if you say you want to be a Nigerian, you want to be elected, and then you don't care, you just get there and then you do whatever you want, and then you expect the citizen to also, toe the line that you want them to toe. How does that work? It is this connection that we want to establish. I know that it's going to be a difficulty. We don't expect this to be a tea party, but we also expect that people will come together on this up in the interest of this nation that we all believe in the interest of our collective existence.
Honourable Minister, it's quite interesting, this charter, and I do know that there are a lot of other things we're going to bring up with you in the conversation today. Yeah. But how quickly do you think this will be bought into, considering also Nigeria is over 60 years, right?
Yeah.
And we've been saying the national pledge for about that, a pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest, to serve Nigeria with all my strength, to defend her unity and uphold her honor and glory. These are, some will say, this is a charter that we subscribe to in every gathering of the Nigerian people, in every school, every day. But it appears not to have taken root.
Yeah,
how would this seemingly different values charter take root?
Now, you see, in the past, the emphasis has always been on how you expect the Nigerian citizen to behave. There has not been attention so much on how Nigeria itself as a citizen. What does it give to that citizen so that he will have this feeling that indeed he is a Nigerian? So what this seeks to achieve is to revive those ethos, those things that Nigeria expects his own leader, his elected representative, his appointed representative. In what direction does the Nigerian citizen expect this representative to behave? How does this representative look at him as a citizen? If he provides those things that the citizen wants, it is expected that a citizen will also in turn respect this leader. Because of course, the symbolism of what Nigeria is usually in the leadership. Throughout history, the power to change the course of mankind has always been vested in leaders. Throughout, the history of any developed, society. So it is, the difference this time around, like I said, is that there is this connection, there is this fidelity that we want to now strike. We want Nigerian citizens to behave in a particular direction. But for that to happen, this Nigerian citizen also expects his own country to give him direction, give him security, give him a sense of belonging, provide equity, be fair to him. Now, when these things happen, there will now be some kind of convergence. So, and this is that convergence that we now want to strike.
Is there a commitment, so to speak, from the Nigerian nation here being personified as a human? Is there a commitment, so to speak, that these things we're talking about would be provided? Equity, justice, fair play, inclusivity.
Yeah.
Would this be provided? Because the level of trust, as we speak, is way down there, where it even exists.
It will be there.
It will.
The Nigerian nation, as we know it today, and I've said it here in this platform, that this was not how we're behaving. Go back to the era of the Sardaunas, the Ahmadu Bellos, the Azikiwes, with the healthy rivalry that existed among those people. There is this commitment. All of them believed in this country. All of them, were leading by example. And because they were leading by example, there was this connection between them and those that were that they are leading. Now, over the years, there is a gradual erosion of that. What led to that? So this idea is to attempt to reestablish, to retrace our steps, to go back to those ethos, those values that made us who we were and who we want to be. Now, I know that you will say it is very difficult. It is indeed difficult. We don't expect that this just happens overnight. But of course, the building blocks that will lead to us achieving this is what we are setting out.
The last point about under that 7 core promises of the Nigerian state to the citizens is meritocracy.
Yes.
And you say vices like nepotism, favoritism, and the promotion of mediocrity negate the concept of merit, which is indispensable to the meaningful advancement. Some of the issues you've raised about our founding fathers, what they stood for. There are persons in FCT, even as high as the ministerial level, who say they get the impression that in the FCT, if they are not from the north, maybe around them, people are looking at them suspiciously saying, these ones have come from the south, you want to come and take over the seat here, and they wonder. These are people who are supposed to understand this ethos. So if that is happening to them at that stage, with people who ordinarily understand that, look, the founding fathers wanted us to all live in peace and harmony. How do you, for instance, intend to let those kind of people see reason that it ought not to be that we should abide by some of these?
I think it comes to what I said earlier. By the time whoever is leading, deals with his fellow humans fairly, with equity, with justice, with this belief that we are all Nigerians, whoever is there will also say, come on, I think this person is talking sense. Why don't we listen to him? But when the leader himself, who is now the symbol of leadership, the symbol of Nigeria, now treats people unfairly, without equity, then of course Nigerians will not believe in that. And that's why I said, in the first place, the difference between this charter and what we've been having is that everybody believes that Nigerian citizens will behave in a particular way. But they've not also told the Nigerian citizen, or the Nigerian citizen is not seeing that he's also being respected by his own leaders. He's also not being treated fairly. There is no equity. There is no security provided for him. So why will you now tell me, it takes two to tango.
Yeah. But, as good as this is on paper, the other challenge is security is a major component that could either support or thwart this. Because if people look and see that, look, certain things are happening, they feel security agencies are not doing what they ought to do, or they get an iota or any idea or impression whatsoever, rightly or wrongly, that they seem to be looking the other way when it concerns a certain group of people. And then when some things are done, they don't approach it rightly. They will question, in fact, they will almost thrash this charter until security does the right thing.
I agree with you, but you also have to also say this. The security agencies, for example, are also doing their best. Sometimes it is easy for you to say security agencies are looking the other way. You don't know what they go through. They are dying every day, paying the supreme price to keep Nigeria one, to keep us all together. Just imagine one night in Abuja without any policeman on the street. Just imagine going to the northeast without a single soldier, without any boots on ground to try to make us sleep well. What will happen? That is where you now begin to imagine that these people are actually contributing to our collective existence. They are contributing to our growth. They are contributing to our development, because without security, like you said, of course, everything else collapses. So it is easy to say security agencies are looking the other way around, but you also have to look at it. There may be a few elements who, of course, are not behaving the way they should behave, but I think by and large, security agencies are doing their best for this country. We need to support them. We need to make them feel. In America, for example, I mean, during the war, the Gulf War, and their war in Afghanistan, when you are at the airport and they bring back bodies of their soldiers who have paid supreme price, people line up, almost sometimes, observing without being told, some minutes of silence just for them to pass. But when you now only project the image of the Nigerian soldier as that one who is not doing enough, as that person who is not there to protect you, then of course there's a problem. He is also a Nigerian. Anybody who is ready to pay the supreme price for you to live must be respected. I think that the security agencies also have to be respected. They also have to see the Nigerians that they are working for, also see them as important players in our national development. But don't just look at them as people who just look the other way around. I mean, arrests are being made. They go to war. These terrorists are being killed. I know it's not enough. They need to do more. But that doesn't mean that they're doing nothing.
Do you agree with some of the people who think that the commander-in-chief has got to hold them up to higher level standards and accountability, such that they all know and people can also see on the streets, both in terms of their conduct and in terms of the results, such that they can then say, okay, we see, because of course we know that a lot rises and falls with leadership.
Like I said, throughout any history, change can never happen when the right leadership is not there. The leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for example, is providing is such that will give these security agents, or is giving these security agents this sense that they're very important to us. Mark you, these people are also Nigerians. They also don't feel happy when, for example, some for media organizations, almost always putting out things that make them feel that they are not doing enough. If, for example, you go out and terrorists are killed, why don't you put that in front? Why are you in a hurry to say soldiers have been killed? Why are you in a hurry to say that, these soldiers are not doing anything? They are doing so much. So what they also want from you is a two-way thing. You provide for them. They also provide for you. But I understand, and it is important that the president himself, holds them to higher standard of accountability. That's what leadership is about. He will continue to do that,
And speaking of which, I know that he's spoken about how he understands the pains of Nigerians with the economy and some of the decisions that are taken into the interest of Nigerians. But many keep wondering too, that does the government actually understand the gravity, the impact of these policies on everyday Nigerians? They just wonder. So what is it that government doesn't understand, how they need to, because people expect all these policies to immediately, in fact, since yesterday, cushion the effect, because both in terms of the CNG buses, the subsidy, palliatives, the impacts have been few and far between.
Okay, let me put it this way. You are premising your argument on the fact that this problem just started yesterday. Now, the foundation of our economy has actually, taken a beating a long time ago. The substructure of our national economy has been one that cannot hold, a meaningful, solid structure on it. So it is important that Nigerians recognize that the president and his team will have to go back to reset that. And that was why from day one, he said, look, subsidy issue has to go. He anticipated that there will be this pain, of course. He anticipated that there will be some difficulty that Nigerians is going to, will encounter. But it would be worse if that subsidy didn't go. It will have been difficult to carry out any meaningful. We need to free up resources.
We haven't seen anyone prosecuted or at least facing the music concerning or those who they tag to be subsidy thieves. They said there are several, but we haven't seen one. What's going on?
Well, now this is where you have to look at Nigeria as a nation. First, you have the executive, you have the judiciary, you also have the legislature, and you have the Nigerian people. Everybody has to play his part. It is not enough to just say, this person is a thief. Once you say it's a thief and security agents are doing their work, they also rely on another arm of government to say, okay, go and prosecute him. There is no way the president will say, because you're a thief, just go to prison. This democracy happening. We're in a democratic environment. The president cannot say, you are a thief, go to jail.
Are they being investigated?
Of course, everybody is being investigated. The security agents are doing a lot in that. They don't have to come out to say, they will have to reach some point before they come out and say, this is what we have found, and then we are now ready to take this person to court.
Ms. Malagi, but the president also has a team that's supposed to prosecute some of these people that have been indicted, so to speak. So how long would the investigations take place before we begin to see action? Because the truth is that we mentioned earlier that the trust deficit is there and Nigerians want to see action. The economy has taken a beating from a long time back. But then a new team is brought on to make a drastic change. And we're seeing, or Nigerians are perceiving that the new team is doing the same old, and expecting different results.
No, I don't think that is correct. I think that the president is doing it differently. When the fuel subsidy was asked to go, he immediately brought in some, interim measures to cushion that. You talked about the CNG, for example, here. That is expected to cut down the cost of transportation by about 50%. Nobody did that before. Labor, on day one, first day of October, the president, he was going to have 25,000 wage award to labor. They came with an argument that 25,000 was not enough. The president listened. We had a conversation with them. Additional 10,000 naira was given. And they accepted it. So the president is not saying, or Nigeria or the government is not saying that this is going to be the end of the story. But so much is happening as economic cleanup is always working. I know that we are not yet there. It's not El Dorado yet. But what is important is that this solid foundation will have to be laid for us to achieve the desired prosperity that we all want to achieve. At the end of the day, it's a hard journey. I want you to remember that the president is 7 months old in office. Now, I'm not going to make excuses that 7 months is such a short time. But for a long-term plan, you need a lot more time to continue to put these structures. But as you trudge along, there will be shocks, there will be turbulence, there will be this occasional, dislocation that you find. But the vision of the president is very clear. He wants to take Nigeria to desired prosperity. He works day and night to achieve that. Every day, all the ministers and everyone is working in that direction. If the results are not seen yet, we ask Nigerians to be a little bit more patient. I know it is difficult, especially when people are finding it difficult, to purchase some food items as a result of some of these policies. But government is doing a lot to make sure that this thing happens. There are a lot of things, even the FX thing, all those things, they will stabilize at the end of the day. Everybody is unhappy.
If you can hear me.
This level. But of course.
Yeah. Honorable Minister, if you can hear me, thank you so much for all the things that you have said. I have quite a number of things listed, but you said just a second or two ago that, people should understand the vision of the president. This reminds me of the need for a national vision of sorts. You would remember Sonny Okoson's back in time. He sang a very, very prominent song, Which Way Nigeria? And it seems like every time we have a new president, there is a new direction for the country. Every time there is a president, there is a new direction for the country. You have talked about America, and a number of people will also reference one or two other countries that, irrespective of whatever, there is a direction that the country is going, no matter who is in power. What is the national vision? What is the Nigerian vision towards which this national values charter is being piloted? Because it will be good for people to know this is where we are going and this is how we can get there, which is the values charter. What is the national vision? What should Nigerians be seeing as this is where Nigeria is going, whether it's this government or the subsequent ones?
Thank you very much. Of course, we have a vision. There must be a vision for any country to survive. What is that vision? We want to have the Nigeria of our dream. We want to have a country that has prosperity for everyone. We want to have a nation that is safe, that is secured, that is equitable, that puts emphasis on merit. We want to have a nation that will have prosperity, that will measure up with every other developed nation in the world or developing nation in the world. That vision, encompasses the need for all of us, the leaders and the led, to come together to work in that direction. You don't just wake up and then you just have the country that you need overnight. It's a tedious journey, and democracy is a long walk. Of course, every regime that comes, will want to build on that. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not saying every good thing that has happened in the past should be discarded. But what he's saying is that let us drive all of it towards the same vision of national prosperity, a country that all of us as Nigerians will want to have at the end of the day. This is where he's driving this country to, and that is why we ask for this patience. It cannot just happen in 7 months. But of course, the building blocks will have to be laid, like I said earlier. And that's what the president is doing. The vision of the president is that we want to have a country that is united, that is purposeful, that is, secured, that also have a great prosperity for all of us. That's the vision.
Perhaps the challenge, one of the challenges here, which you have spoken to as well in your response to some of Chamberlain and Neota's question, is the implementation. A good number of Nigerians would look at the people who lead them, and you have spoken quite copiously to that it is some of the leaders, ministers. You saw a video recently of a prominent Nigerian, well, we don't know who it was, in an official vehicle going against traffic. And some of those things are remiss all over the country. And a number of people will be asking, so if the leaders are doing this, how are we going to reverse things? There are a number of people who will point to Singapore, China, and a number of other countries and say there are serious punitive measures for anyone, especially leaders, who go against national values. Is there a plan in that direction for us in Nigeria?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you have to go back to what I said earlier. This national value charter we are talking about, it's not just for the citizen or for the ordinary person. It's also for the person who is also leading. You don't expect a minister or any government functionary to go against traffic. You don't expect him to do what you have asked the citizens not to do. So it's a two-way thing. And that's the difference between this charter and what we have had previously. In the past, everybody says he wants the Nigerian citizen to behave in this direction. What is that person that is saying that? How is he also behaving? So this charter will hold both leaders and the citizens accountable, because, of course, we have already set out what the citizens expect Nigeria to provide for him, and we also expect what Nigeria also expects its citizens to behave in a particular direction. So it's a two-way thing. All of them, we are not looking at Nigeria as human now. The two have to come together and behave cooperatively, responsibly, honestly for this to happen. There is no excuse for any leader to go against traffic. There is no excuse for any leader to do what is not right and go scot-free. You've seen the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has demonstrated that in the last couple of weeks. Nobody is above the law. Once there appears to be any infringement in the way you do your activity, of course leadership will set in, and he has been doing that.
Okay, well, it's a good one. Many people wait to see how we build from that going on, Honorable Minister. But then you, in the analogy of Nigeria as a person and Nigerians as citizens, it's like that of Nigeria as a vehicle and the citizens as passengers on that vehicle. But then there is a place for mobilization towards this ingenious idea that you have come up with. It is in the Constitution. Section 22 talks about national ethics, and the first of them is discipline, which is also number one of the 7 that Chamberlain read out the other time. It's now in how Nigerians are mobilized to agree with this. Back in time, we had situations where musicians sang songs. Timmy, what's his name? Sonny Okosun, I cited the other time, which were Nigeria. Veno Marioge sang Nigeria Go Survive, and a host of so many other people. Timmy Dakolo did that wonderful song where all we have, we defend our land and all of that. And several other people are trying as much as possible to build up towards one united Nigeria. Is music, the entertainment industry, one of the instruments that the Ministry of Information and National Orientation is looking at to mobilize Nigerians towards these values? Otherwise, perhaps there is some other way.
Absolutely. You know, the creative industry as a whole is being involved. Of course, music will be there, the creative arts will be there, and much more. You know, everybody will be mobilized. It's a huge undertaking, and that is why we say the president is going to lead that. We've had this conversation with the president himself. He's going to lead Nigerians towards that. It is a major project that all Nigerians have to embrace. Without this reorientation, without this orientation of the Nigerian citizen towards, you know, a sense of belonging in his own country and how he looks at his own country and how he expects his own country to also behave towards him, there will be no prosperous Nigeria that all of us crave to have. So the creative industry, yes, I agree, they will be part of it and much more. The media, the students, everybody will be part of this at the end of the day.
So when is this going to be launched?
Very soon. We're waiting for the president to be back, and then we're going to have a new date. And this date will be communicated to Nigerians, and the president will lead this.
So this is like going to be something that is going to drive or will be there throughout the, assuming they get a second term.
Oh, great. Absolutely. And beyond, what we seek to do is to lay a foundation that will become almost impossible for anybody to jettison. I mean, once upon a time, Nigerians were queuing to join buses. Once upon a time, Nigerians were queuing to go to the banks. Once upon a time, Nigerians were, you know, were looking the other way to see if there's nobody looking at them for them to dispose of their trashes, of their waste. What happened? So it is that collapse of this thinking, of this belief, that we're bringing back. We all have to recover our senses for this country to be great again.
Honorable Minister, we'll see you as next to the president. You're going to be the arrowhead next to the president.
Well, as Minister of Information and National Orientation, I have this responsibility to lead this. Of course, queuing behind the president and following his vision. I intend to do that. All
right, so we do hope that this will play out and everybody, at least the president and the ministers and the elected officials, the governors too, they're all expected to lead from the front when it has to do with this. We thank you for coming on. The Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation, Alhaji Mohammed Idris Malagi. We wish you all the best, yourself and your team.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, so we'll be back, but business will also come up in a moment. Don't go away.
So, there is a small problem. Despite all the entertaining ads we've created for you, some of you still haven't tried our services. Come on. First of all, we are a licensed microfinance bank. Sorry about that. For instance, you can open a business account with us and get our POS with it. It's good for your business.
99.99% reliable.
I love it. Our card, it dey work. My money no dey hang. You can open a business or personal account with us in minutes. Our customer care is available. Abby? So, when it comes to reliability, security, convenience, and speed, you only need one bank.
Join millions of happy customers. Download the MoneyPoint app or find an agent near you to get started.
This ad is the MoneyPoint ad. Don't forget that.
The Catholic Archdiocese of Abuja, through the Cardinal Onayekon Foundation for Peace, announces the birthday celebration and book presentation of His Eminence, John Cardinal Onayekon, CON. The book, entitled Religion for Peace, Post-Retirement Reflections of Cardinal John Onayekon on Interfaith Dialogue, will be presented under the distinguished chairmanship of the Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, GCON. Date, 1st of February 2024 in Abuja, time 11 a.m. prompt. General Yakubu Gowon, retired GCFR, Grand Patron of the Day. Host, Chief Lumo Lulu Breaks. RSVP 090-6600-6000 and 080-2244-3542.
Imagine lovely meals you can cook with these ingredients. You spend heavily, but no guarantee of a tasty meal. Not making a right choice of seasoning cube can ruin your meal, money, and confidence. For a tasty meal, do not compromise. Choose Gold.
Use Terra Gold for the rich, consistent taste your loved ones crave for. Good for soups, stews, and jollof. Terra Gold. 1 cube, endless possibilities.
Hello and welcome to the first trading day of February. I do hope generous, somewhat profitable for investors right there. Good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you might be watching from. Let's get the top stories that set your agenda for today. Now, we'll see the Africa Development Bank at this time says it has successfully completed the sale of its much-anticipated hybrid capital note, marking a significant milestone in the first-ever financing of its kind among multilateral development banks. This comes as the Multilateral Development Bank faces increasing pressure to boost lending opportunities, particularly to aid developing economies in addressing crises such as those arising from climate change. The $750 million perpetual hybrid notes carries a 5.75% coupon, which is lower than the initially suggested 6.3%. Meanwhile, this unique debt equity instrument, which is deeply subordinated, has a lower credit rating than the lender's AAA bonds, and investors have the option to redeem it after 10.5 years or every 5 years thereafter. And in a significant development for Nigeria's financial landscape, FBN Holdings PLC has appointed business mogul Mr. Femi Otedola as the new chairman of its board of directors after a long power contest for control of the oldest bank. This leadership change follows a recent board meeting where Mr. Otedola succeeds the outgoing chairman of the board, Alhaji Ahmad Abdullahi. The appointment signifies a new phase for FBN Holdings, and the company under its new leader hopes to strengthen its market position and deliver increased value to shareholders and customers. Stakeholders and analysts are closely watching this transition, anticipating the potential impacts of Mr. Otedola's chairmanship on FBN Holdings. And definitely we know the CBN has been speaking a lot with a lot of circulars coming, and we have a couple yesterday. And this time, the bank is saying suspected cases of excessive foreign currency speculation and hoarding from Nigeria banks are to be addressed right now. The new circular introduces a set of guidelines aimed at reducing the risk associated with these practices. The circular, titled Harmonization of Reporting Requirements on Foreign Currency Exposures of Banks, highlights the CBN's concerns over a growing trend of banks holding large foreign currency positions. The circular also stipulates that banks should maintain adequate stocks of high-quality liquid foreign assets, such as cash and government securities, in each significant currency, among other requirements. We'll definitely be drilling down on what this means for the FX market and the banking industry going forward. And there you have it. We have the closing gong for the month of January. That definitely, we know what the closing gong means. It means that that's the end of a trading day or the month. And this time, the governor, Inua Yahaya, visited the exchange to explore how the state can harness the capital markets to stimulate sustainable development. The Ngobe State Governor, during the closing ceremony, announced the state government's plans to raise about 30 billion naira from the capital market through issuance of green bonds.
The Green Bond is an initiative aimed at raising funds in order to finance eco-friendly and environmentally friendly investments, especially in assets that will contribute to restoration and upliftment of human life, so that we can reduce the impacts of climate change and global warming. And we aim to do so that we raise funds. We are expecting to raise about 30 billion naira for the start, and we may break it into segments, but that's our intention. And we're sure with the support we saw and the acceptance that we've gotten from the floor and from the chief stakeholders, we are going to hit our target.
And yes, as I did mention before, we've seen a lot of pressure on the Naira in January alone, and definitely the Central Bank of Nigeria. We've seen a lot of circulars, come out, and just yesterday, we see the banks were actually addressed in the latest circulars. Also, IMTOs, International Money Transfer Operators, were also addressed. New guidelines at this point. We're all trying to save the Naira at this point. Joining us now is Dumebi Oluwole, senior economist and at FDC and STAIRS, joining me right here in the studio. Great to have you, Dumebi.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
Yes, I don't know if you can keep count of the circulars we've seen from the central bank. At this point,
like
they just
3.
keep coming back to back.
Yes, and they're important to somewhat signal to the economy and try to instill confidence. But if we can take a few steps back to understand why the circulars are even coming out in the first place, and also trying to understand and situate it into what's happening with the Forex market. So starting off, I think on the 29th, the exchange rate significantly depreciated, at least per the FMDQ reporting. It depreciated from around 890 naira to a dollar to about 1,300 and I think 52 naira to a dollar. The next day, it moved up again, to about to over 1,400. And as of yesterday, it was about 1,500. So the reason why this happened is for two things. Number one, the CBN had earlier come out to say that there was some level of misreporting with FX transactions from market participators, dealers, DMBs, and the likes. And then FMDQ, in response to that circular, alongside its own regulations and its own evidences per its portal and reporting, realized that they had to also update their methodology, change the methodology to reflect the market rate. And this is because initially what was reported on FMDQ, and I think from the CBN as well, is a weighted average of the last 10-day trades. But right now, from both the CBN and from FMDQ, we're going to see a more holistic approach, capturing rates from 12 noon the day before up until the next day, so meaning 24 hours trades. And the price you're now going to see is actually just closing rate for the day. So initially what was being reported was, in the morning as well, you also find some indicative quotes on FMDQ's platform. They're saying they're going to stop that. Basically, the new methodology is now going to reflect market realities. And what now happened afterwards is that we saw a very quick convergence between the official rate and the parallel rate. As a matter of fact, I think on the 30th, the official rate was higher than the parallel rate. So what we're seeing now is a full convergence between the official rate and parallel market rate. And more significantly is that it somewhat seems that there has been two devaluations of the currency between May 2023, when we initially had the first FX liberalization, and just this January, we're seeing another. And altogether, we're seeing the currency lose over 40%, over 50% really of its value in a matter of 8 months.
But if we look at January, you know, at this point, we see the start, the official window was about 872 naira to start. Then obviously ended about 1,455 naira to the dollar. 40% down. That's just January. That's for the official window. Then we have the parallel market. If you can put that up for me, 1,215 naira, the parallel market, to 1,470, 17% down. So definitely we see the urgency. You know, why the central bank is releasing all these circulars, all of these guidelines at this point. But they did mention something about some of the practices of, you know, the banks, you know, at this point, you know, holding too much dollars, trying to create some kind of hedge and profit, you know, from the volatility, you know, that we see in the market. Banks shouldn't do that.
I mean, I wouldn't say they said banks are doing that. What the circular is trying to do, clearly by all indication, is they're trying to mop up or somewhat reduce the demand for dollars at the official
So the banks weren't just holding all of that?
Of course not. So the thing is, when you look at the activities that happen on the FMDQ market, you realize that banks are pretty much the largest players in that market. And what the CBN is trying to do with that particular circular is two ways. First, trying to help the banks hedge against foreign exchange losses. Remember that I think up from last year, we did see a lot of banks and even businesses, multinationals, record a lot of FX conversion and translation losses. So what this does to some extent is somewhat reduce the bank's exposure to such losses, because the net opening balance for a bank at that point in time is pretty easy to lose at that point when you start the trading day. So the central bank is saying 20% of your shareholders' funds should not be held as, once it is in excess of that, you can, you know, try to mop up that money, reduce your exposure to FX conversion or FX translation losses. On the second hand of that, what that also does is it somewhat helps to reduce too much activity, like too much demand at the FX market outweighing supply. So it's somewhat of a win-win to an extent. But then again, when you also look at the fact that if we backtrack a bit, you realize that the main issue here is dollar liquidity. And the main sources of Forex for Nigeria was still having issues with that.
But the CBN is making it look like the banks have a lot of dollars. And if they push all of that, you know, out, give it to some of those customers, then there'll be liquidity.
So this is it. banks are in the business to make profits. The same way a multinational is trying to buy some dollars, boost their business and stuff. So everyone has some dollars that they will definitely trading in the FX market. And when you say banks are, the banks are not speculators. They have dollar positions, and they will trade those dollar positions. And remember that people like myself and you can walk up to a bank to actually request for BTAs, PTAs. So
but
the
we
banks
hardly get it when we go there.
The point is that, Laddie, you're trying to put me on the spot here, but the point is that the demand for dollars from banks are not aloof. They're not just coming out of thin air. People are demanding for the dollars the banks are demanding for on the FX market in the official window. So really what the CBN is just trying to do, like I mentioned, two things: trying to hedge the banks away from FX losses. Remember that if you have Naira, if you're trading in Naira and maybe you also lend in dollars, when that person is paying you back in Naira, to some level, to some extent, you would definitely make some losses. Aside from that, there's still a lot of distortions in Nigeria's FX market. And I think that's where our conversation should really be focused on the problems that Nigeria's FX market is facing, so that we actually point policymakers to the solutions that we can actually create or we can bring out to solve the problem. And remember, like I mentioned, when we look at the issues that Nigeria's FX market is facing, it's two ways. There's an issue with market equilibrium, meaning that supply is consistently underperforming demand. Right. And what needs to be done is to support supply. And then the second thing is there's fear, there's panic, investor confidence is low. How do we also hedge against that? And when you look at the cycle of when you look at I'll call it the life cycle now, it all starts with addressing the issues with supply. And the second part of it is CBN being more transparent with its policy. And that's why we're seeing a bunch of circulars just coming out, so, okay, this is what we mean.
What about
this is what
we're
trying to do.
IMTOs?
The IMTOs. Of course, it's another thing to reduce the panic, right? So remember I said there are market distortions. And apart from supply, we also see that we have some level of restrictions. And the CBN's policies or CBN's, I'll say, communications are somewhat still unclear to the markets. And people just speculate, okay, could this be what they're trying to say? Is this what they're trying? And then the markets react in response based off of what they think the CBN is trying to say. So with the IMTOs, remember there was some level of restriction to the rates that the IMTO could charge for transactions. I think it was plus or minus 2.5% of the previous day's rate. But the CBN now is saying, just charge at the market rate. So what this does is reduces the restrictions on IMTOs. It makes the market more transparent, and it also makes it so that everybody is trading at the same rate. So by the next MPC meeting, we should see some level of coherence in all of these policies that the CBN is, dropping in trickles. And the end of it all is to instill investor confidence, increase it so much so that we're beginning to see investment inflows trickle in. Now, this takes us back to the supply equation. On the fiscal side of things, we need to see crude oil production significantly increase so that oil receipts increase. Then on the investment side of things, both from portfolio and direct investors, which has significantly declined. I think between Q2 2022 and Q2 2023, we saw almost an 80% decline in total capital importation into the country. To address that particular problem, that's where instilling confidence comes in. And that's what the CBN is trying to do in trickles. And by the next MPC meeting, what I was trying to say is we need to see, number one, a more hawkish CBN. You need to increase interest rates so that it's able to narrow the inflation interest rate differential and reduce the negative real returns on investment. What that does is tell investors that Nigeria is open to do business. You can bring in your money, you get good yields compared to what you're going to get out there. Remember, exchange rate is the price of a country's currency in the international market. So you're not only competing with external vulnerabilities on your country's currency, but you're also going to compete with domestic shocks. So addressing domestic shocks and trying to hedge against external shocks by increasing interest rates are the two things that we need to do now. And I think the final thing in terms of policy directions would be to avoid policy contradictions. An example would be increasing interest rates and allowing money supply to keep increasing. That way you're contradicting your policy moves. And again, it does send conflicting signals to the market.
And I guess we also
leaving
need to
them to
see
speculate.
synergy
Exactly, with other
agencies, because we know food inflation is a big driver of headline inflation at this time. So the Ministry of Agriculture needs to do something about getting food
inflation in check. But I mean,
food inflation down.
When you look at the problems, again, looking at the root causes of all of these issues helps to understand what policies, and helps us to somewhat consolidate the kind of policies and solutions that we need to, make. The first one is when you look at food inflation, what is driving food inflation? Two things: exchange rates and low agricultural productivity. Why is agricultural productivity low? There's insecurity. Farmers are not able to go to their farms. Poor storage facilities. Addressing all of those issues are on the fiscal side of things. And that's why I mentioned policy consolidation. You can't see contractionary monetary policies happening and expansionary fiscal policies happening. And by expansionary fiscal policies, I mean that the federal government is spending meaningfully on the economy, because the government still needs to spend. But the question now is, what are you spending on? And how does that trickle down to create economic development and economic growth and somewhat solve the structural deficiencies that are plaguing the country? In terms of food inflation, that's where the federal government should spend and focus their attention on. It's not by intervention schemes that we're not properly monitoring. We need to ensure that these issues that are reducing and stifling food production are significantly addressed and catered for. Then on the second side of things, you look at the exchange rate, because right now that's a significant major driver of food inflation through higher imported costs. The exchange rate pass-through effect has become more potent, and the way to do that, like I mentioned, is what we're seeing the CBN somewhat trying to do now. We need to instill confidence,
the CBN has
bring in the dollars.
Action mode, at this time.
And that's exactly what we need.
Short-term benefits of these two circulars for the IMTUs and for the banks.
Simple convergence. The market rates should be more transparent now. We should see an increase in FX transactions, because now it should be easier to get at the market rate. There's no the arbitrage opportunity has significantly declined, because literally, if you go to the parallel market, you're literally going to get the same rate if you go to the commercial bank. So there's really no spread, or even if there is a spread, because it's normal globally, but the spread right now is not so much.
And we don't need that parallel market moving farther away.
Exactly.
We need liquidity in the official window so that we can get all the dollars we need at this point. And not demand dollars too much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
To Mebi Oluwole, senior economist at FDC and STAIRS. Thank you so much. All right, so we've been having a lot of news at this point. Market news. See, First Bank of Nigeria Holdings appointing Nigerian billionaire businessman Femi Otedola as a new chairman of its board. We've got a lot of earnings. It's earnings season. This time we've got one from BOA and Transcorp. So definitely there's a lot of activity in the markets at this time. Let's bring in Mr. Olatunde Amolegbe, MD CEO, Arthur Stephen Asset Management, joining us via Zoom. Great to have you on the show. Good morning.
Good morning, Ladi. Thanks to be here.
Fantastic. So definitely big news yesterday with FBNH and Mr. Femi Otedola there announced as the chairman. How do you see this impacting, the bank structure and investor sentiment towards that stock?
First Bank is, as you know, is one of the bellwether stock quoted on the exchange, and it's a bank that have had quite a bit of corporate and governance challenges over the last, I would say, possibly 10 years. And it's clear that those corporate and board challenges, have affected the performance of the bank. You and I know that when you say the bank with the highest level of all the indices you can mention, be it in terms of size, be it in terms of total asset, be it in terms of even profitability. But you will agree with me that in the last say 10 years, all that have changed. The bank.
All right, it seems we're having some network issues there. We'll still try and get back, Mr.
Some of its the biggest bank anymore.
Okay. All right, Mr. Amolegbe, I'll come back to you once the audio is much better. But let's quickly dash on to some of these earnings now. We see, started with Boa Foods at this point. We see revenue there, 728.44 billion. That's up about 74.13%. That's for Boa Foods. Full year 2023 highlights unaudited results. Gross profit, that was up about 89.27%. Pre-tax profit, we see that 12.69% up. And after-tax profit, we see that's up 22%. So we're seeing quite an impressive outing there for Boa Foods, despite the headwinds we see in where they operate at this time. We see food inflation sky high at this point. We also have Transcore. Also, we got their earnings yesterday. Releases unaudited financial statements, and from we see for Transcore, revenue was up about 44%. Gross profit, that was up 60% at 105.98 billion there. Pre-tax profit up 85%. Let's try and bring back Mr. Olatunde Amolegbe now. Let's try that again. We had audio issues there with the internet. Mr. Amolegbe, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic. So, you were trying to finish your thoughts there on the impact for the share price when it comes to FBNH with this Mr. Otedola there taking on the reins as a chairman. So you can finish your thoughts on that because we did lose you for a moment there. Then we'll go to the earnings.
So like I was saying, the corporate and the board issues that the bank has had in the last, say, 10 years had affected it. And it has affected its positioning regarding the Committee of Banks in the country. The hope now is that the appointment of Mr. Otedola sort of starts to bring to rest some of the corporate and board issues that the bank has had. And the hope is that, gradually the banks can start, assuming its position, again, in terms of the size, in terms of profitability and other indices. And then the shareholders of the bank can start to benefit from, what we know is clearly one of the bellwether banks in the country.
All right, I'm still looking at that, the financial services sector. We see the banks, the FUGAs. We've seen a continuous decline in that counter for a couple of days now. From last week, also, we're seeing losses as much as 9% on their share prices. What's going on? Why is the profit taking continuing so long when it comes to financial services in the market? Mr. Amolegbe, I don't know if you heard me.
If you could take that again.
Yes. So for the financial services counter, we've seen continuous decline. Profit taking is still going on that counter. Even at yesterday at the close, we're seeing the FUGAs there, the tier 1 banks, down about 9-8%, up to 10%. Why are investors taking profit there so much?
Well, the investors have also seen gains of 30-40% on some of these counters in the last 3 months. So the market will do what it will do. Typically, when people make money, they want to take some of it off the table. So I think that what we're seeing now is just a natural profit-taking trend that normally the market always adopts. The expectation is that the price will come down, and it also provides an entry opportunity for people that did not enter before. The fundamentals of these companies are still strong. We've seen some of them started to bring their results out, their unaudited results out, and see that their performance is strong. So, so the market is just doing what it will do, which is typically when you see gains, people want to take profits off the table. And so my expectation is that, very soon it will turn around again, and we'll probably see another upward trend in the prices of these stocks.
Right, we'll definitely be watching out for that. But you did mention, investors that are on the sideline also trying to get into this market, and definitely a pullback is the best option, to get into the market. But looking at the way things are, at this time, there's a cost of living crisis, inflation, currency devaluation. investors, consumers are having to deal with a lot at this time. Talk to me about how this is impacting, the desire to invest. Is it still there at this point?
One of the major side effects or main effect, if you will, of inflation is the fact that the cost of living goes up, disposable income comes down because, of course, you're not buying products at much higher prices. The direct impact of that is that you have lower savings. Lower savings also means less money available for investments. All right, and while it appears that we have not seen that impact the stock market at this moment, is that the major players in the market seems to be institutional now, not necessarily the retail investors. So until we actually see statistics of retail investor participation, I suspect that what we're going to see is that retail investor participation will probably have reduced a little bit because, again, because of higher cost of living, savings is likely to have also dropped. And then the amount of money investors are able to put in investments will probably have reduced also. But the exchange is probably not feeling it that much because of increased participation by increased participation by the institution.
Okay. All right, Mr. Amolegbe, I guess, at some point, some people rather, eat than, take that money and go invest because a hungry man, you can't really be investing much because you can also lose your money, out there. Thank you so much for coming on, Mr. Olatunde Amolegbe, MD CEO, Arthur Stephen Asset Management. It was great having you.
It's my pleasure, Ladi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. All right, so we'll take a quick look at some of the numbers from yesterday. Now, we'll see the all-share index, 101,000, still above the 100,000 level, 1.90%. That was a drop we had for the final trading day of January. Equity cap, 55 trillion. Let's look at the activity, the trading activity. We see volume was still on high side there, 15.44% compared to the previous session. Value was up 102% at 22 billion. That was traded, but we had lesser deals at 14,288. Top trades, Transcore, 76 million, UBA, Zenith Bank, 61 million. So definitely, it's all red for the sectors that we track here. Banking, again, taking a big hit, down 8.07%. Consumer goods, 1.82% down. Insurance, 3.02%. Industrial goods, again, profit-taking all over these counters for the last trading day of January. So right now is a countdown to the first trading day of February, which is today. Let's see how the market closes. But maybe we might see some kind of cherry picking and get some outlook for how the market is going to fare in February. That's it from me right here on Business Morning. Back to the Sunrise Daily team.
This event is to mark the first 100 days in office for the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. It's a gathering of senior government officials, religious and traditional leaders, members of the academia, young people, and members of the civil society. The focus of the one-day dialogue is youth, religious leaders, and the fight against corruption. And the chairman speaks on some of the commission's experience in dealing with religious bodies.
We were able to trace about over 7 billion to a particular religious body. And so what did I do? I said, look, write a letter to the leader of that religious sect. We did. And the next thing we saw was a restraining order. The money traced to that religious organization to their leaders. We got a restraining order stopping us from inviting them, stopping us from recovering the money. Meanwhile, people have died along the line. When I was chief of staff, we investigated the issue of money laundering. Somewhere in this country, there's a particular religion, a sect, that laundered money for terrorists.
According to the EFCC, Over 60 billion naira was recovered between October 2023 and January 19th, 2024, and a total of 747 convictions were secured by the Commission during the same period. The effort of the Commission is recognized by religious and traditional leaders. However, they made suggestions on how to fight corruption, especially among young people.
Let us not forget to teach by example. Let us demonstrate very clearly always by our way of life that honesty is possible and rewarding.
Care must be taken in who you appoint into which office if you really want to succeed as a government. These appointees must have no records of criminal activities. They must not have character deficits.
An average youth will think that these leaders, for them to be getting away with a lot of things, that means I have to look for a quick way to get to the top as well. So the system is actually brewing and brewing corruption.
We are in a terrain now where vice chancellors can hardly even correct their pupils or their graduates or undergraduates because of reprisals that we fear may come on to the universities or vice chancellors.
Taking into cognizance the demographic prediction of Nigeria's population by 2050, which stands at 400 million people, the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, says more needs to be done to foster communications and turn Nigeria's population to dividends for the country.
Nigerians have been victims of mislabeling. Such gross misrepresentation fails to reflect the true essence of our diverse and resilient nation of 226 million. Our nation comprises hardworking, honest citizens who contribute significantly to various fields globally, from medicine to artificial intelligence.
The Vice President also launched the Interfaith Preaching and Teaching Manuals, as well as the Commission's Fraud Risk Assessment Prevention and Control Project for ministries, departments, and agencies.
Well, that's part of our conversation this morning with Mr. Wahab Shitu, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
First of all, what do you... That revelation by the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission is quite worrisome, wouldn't you say? 7 billion naira traced to a religious sect that's been using the cover for money laundering.
Well, that is worrisome, but it also is evidence of the fact that there is generally a systemic collapse, institutional collapse, which goes across all strata of the society, whether in the religious sphere, whether in the political sphere, whether in the economic sphere. You have this pervasiveness of corruption, a breakdown in systems, in structures, in institutions, and that it also underscores the need why we have to cooperate and collaborate with EFCC in stemming the tide of economic and financial crimes. I'm particularly very, very excited at the new enhancement in the EFCC, who appears to be focused, he appears to be disciplined, integrity-driven, and who appears to be a new sheriff in town, trying to open a new vistas in the fight against corruption, trying to reposition EFCC, trying to refocus EFCC to embrace its core mandate, which is an agency that should be interested in the growth and development of the country. EFCC, in fighting corruption, must also have it at the back of the mind, of its mind that we should not do anything that will stall our growth process. We should not do anything that will stall our developmental process. And so, because of this, you can see that clearly he has hit the ground running. He's trying to rebrand EFCC, He's trying to give EFCC a new face, a new direction. He has set for himself a three-pronged agenda, which is very, very critical of. One, he says he wants to refocus EFCC to embrace its core mandate. If you look at Section 6, Section 7, Section 8 of the EFCC Act, EFCC Act is set up to assist the growth and developmental process of the country. He wants to focus on that. Secondly, he's also determined to entrench accountability and transparency in governance processes. So that, and he has set an example in this direction. For the first time, you saw a chairman who has openly declared his assets and has urged operatives of EFCC at all levels to also declare their assets. So that is in furtherance of his agenda to promote accountability and transparency in governance processes. Thirdly, he said he's also determined to rebuild and then promote the international image of the country. You all know that, for instance, that our image has suffered some kind of bashing in recent times. And so if we need to encourage foreign investors to come in, if we need to encourage direct foreign investment to come in, then we must rebrand our image. We must rebuild our image. We must, he said he's focused on that. And apart from his agenda, he has also outlined some strategies that he has identified to fight this malaise.
Perhaps one of the challenges here that would be playing in the minds of many is how that takes root from the government agencies, ministries, departments, and agencies of government, where, you know, it's easy to say for any Nigerian that that's where the corrupt activities begin. The annual report of the Auditor General is an instrument, for instance, for any anti-corruption agency to use to fight, corruption in the country. A good number of people are named, officials are named in that document every year from 2015, and hardly has any serious action been taken against anyone in that regard. Do you see that as something that should also be championed in the light of accountability and transparency?
Of course, it's a holistic process. And one thing that has also emerged from this new phase of EFCC is that fighting corruption is not just the business of EFCC, ICPC alone. It should be a product of collaboration between other critical stakeholders in the polity who have a duty to collaborate with the EFCC, the press, the media, like this kind of program, and some other entities too, so that we ensure that our systems are strengthened in order to avoid some of the leakages and then scandal that you have alluded to. Our institutions are strengthened in order to be able to deliver on their respective mandates.
But you know about this document, Mr. Shitu.
Yes.
And over the years, all we hear is that the document is submitted to the National Assembly, the Public Accounts Committee, and that's the last we hear of it most of the time.
Yes, I think this is part of the new orientation of the new leadership of EFCC to ensure that some of these things are not swept under the carpet. You also recall that he made mention that we should have a legislation against unexplained wealth, which is, we don't have a legislation here, unlike some other climes like UK, US, and all that, where there's a lifestyle audit of public office holders in order to be able to explain the origin of their stupendous wealth at the expense of the citizens of the country. The document you have alluded to is part of the working materials that the EFCC, under the new leadership of Ola Olukoyede, intends to focus on in building a new Nigeria, in rebranding Nigeria. And it requires the collaborative efforts. And if you look at the strategies which he has mapped out, one of them is preventive measures, preventive mechanisms. I mean, stopping corruption before they even take place at all, through preventive mechanisms. It's also salutary that the new legislature has said, we will fight corruption, but in the context of respect for the rule of law. and that will not. He has also said he will review bail and arrest procedures.
You know, Mr. Shitu, while all of the issues that you are raising are quite laudable, the average Nigerian is looking at the times when they go to government offices to get some jobs done. And it seems like if without rubbing hands, without some stuff passing through one hand to the other, they don't get many things done. We want to get land, want to get whatever in different parts of the country, not just at the federal level, at the state level as well. So speak to us about the instruments of law that the EFCC will find useful in the ministries, departments, and agencies of government, be it at the federal or state level, and how they have been compromised over time, and what needs to be done to tighten the noose.
Thank you. First of all, for EFCC to be able to deliver on its mandate, it must embark upon a self-cleansing, initiative. EFCC itself must be clean to be able to clean Nigeria. And for the first time, you've seen a chairman of EFCC come forward to say, we are going to discourage all forms of gratification and taking of bribes by operatives, by some select operatives. And that if you are caught, it will be visited with sanction. You have not seen that before. Because owning up that some operatives are being compromised and they are giving a bad name to the commission, and that we will fish them out, and everybody is warned, don't take bribes, don't accept gratification. Yes, of course, there are a lot of legislation that can be deployed in copying some of the means you have spoken about. We have the Economic and Financial Crimes Act, which is the law setting up EFCC. Of course, we have the ICPC Act, which is also a law setting the Corrupt Practices Commission. Of course, he has also spoken of the need for us to have the unexplained wealth and the Public Procurement Act. We have some of these laws in place. I think the challenge is to ensure that these laws are effectively enforced. We all agree, you and I agree, everybody agree, that there's pervasive corruption in Nigeria. Pervasive corruption in Nigeria. The wealth of the country, unfortunately, is concentrated in the hands of very few, because the bulk of our commonwealth is stolen by, and that if EFCC is to function, the elephant, it has to be able to tackle the major elephant in the room, which is corruption. And now if we have corruption, the choice we have is whether we want growth and economic development. If the answer is yes, can we assess growth and economic development in an atmosphere of corruption? The answer, of course, is no. So if you want growth and development, we should identify corruption as a major enemy. And that is why EFCC and such specialized agencies are set up. And if you now throw EFCC under the bus, or ICPC under the bus, in some kind of condemnation or surrender, you'll be doing injustice to the system. So that is why it is not just a duty that rests on EFCC and ICPC and all those anti-graft agencies alone. All of us must key into the. I'm happy that if you look at the Nigeria has rose about 5 places in this 2023 corruption perception index. Nigeria is ranked 145 out of 180 countries that were assessed. That is not salutary, no. At least we are making some little progress. Going by this rank, this is little.
Even though the chairman of Transparency International in Nigeria says we should be looking more at the scores and the ranking, and that we didn't do as well in the ranking as we did on the scores.
Yes.
But that's well, of course.
The truth is that this country, there's pervasive corruption in this country. And we see it as an article of faith. I think that narrative must change. And if that narrative must change, then we must support EFCC under the new leadership, particularly when we have seen a young man who has elevated transparency and accountability, is determined to work.
How do we insulate, my apologies for butting in, how do we insulate the EFCC as an institution and the chairman as its leader from political influence that the previous administrations, the previous heads of the agency have suffered?
Well, unfortunately, the system is designed in such a way that the chairman of EFCC cannot be so insulated. And if you want to insulate the chairman of EFCC from such political interference, then we need to redesign the system. We need to change our mindset.
So are you saying...
I'm saying that we need leadership, the political leadership, that is really committed to the fight against corruption, as opposed to oratory. You understand what I'm saying?
Are you saying that the chairman, the EFCC chairman, whoever it is vulnerable to the political class?
Well, of course. But much depends on the individual too. If we have had in the past chairman of EFCC who have said, oh, we will not allow ourselves to be compromised. We will stand for what is right. Although the system eventually is them out.
Okay.
But I'm hoping that this new chairman, given his commitment, his transparency, will make a lot of difference.
Okay. Nyota in Abuja has a question for you as well. Go ahead.
Mr. Shitu, the EFCC under the new chairman, you said everyone needs to come together and support this new chairman or the EFCC under this new leadership. And indeed, that discovery yesterday, or that declaration of what has been discovered of the group that is laundering money for the terrorists is also indeed really commendable. And there are a lot of people who have been screaming, wow, what a discovery. But beyond the wow moment of that announcement would be the process of prosecuting this matter and ensuring that it gets to a conclusive end. So what would be then what should Nigerians and indeed the nation be expecting if the EFCC still has some cases that have been in the EFCC for almost as long as the EFCC itself?
Let me get you. I can't hear you. What did you?
Okay, he's asking that. How do we ensure that the needful is done in terms of the EFCC doing its job when there are cases in court, corruption cases or anti-corruption cases that are as old as EFCC itself?
Thank you. That blame cannot entirely be put at the doorstep of EFCC alone. It's a stakeholders' challenge. When you have delays in the administration of justice, it's a collective blame. The investigators have a share of the blame. The prosecutors have a share of the blame. The defense counsel also have a share of the blame. The judges too has a part of the share of the blame. I think what we require is for us to have a new mindset as even practitioners, that we should have zero tolerance for delays in the administration of justice, and that we should also put in place mechanisms, structures that will forestall delay. For instance, I want to give you an example of this election petition litigation. We all know that in times past, we used to have some of these litigations dragging on throughout the tenure of the elected officials. But the system came with with a solution that some of these things cannot last more than 180 days. There's a time frame. I think we need such kind of intervention in dealing with corruption cases. We set a time frame for conclusion of these cases. Realistically, there's no reason why any corruption matters should exceed a period of 2 years.
Okay.
To finalize. And but apart from these, stakeholders at all levels must also have a change in mindset so that we forestall this element of delay.
How about the states? We know that EFCC is a federal agency of government, but then there is also those who will tell you, and I'm sure it's something you are aware of as well, corruption doesn't just happen within federal government agencies. They happen in the states as well. So how do we cascade some of these ideals to the states level so that everyone knows that all eyes are on them. The eagle's eye is on them as well.
You see, there are best practices for fighting corruption. And I'm very, very excited that the new leadership is the type of EFCC. And I have also had the ICPC, new EMSMA, also emphasize that. Say publicly that they are determined to fight corruption in the context of best practices. Now, when we are talking of best practices in fighting corruption, we are talking of preventive mechanisms, preventive measures that can be put in place, whether at the state, local government, or federal level, in order to stem the tide of corruption. Of course, you can also look at collaboration between all the agencies of government, all the security agencies in fighting corruption. You can deploy technical assistance. You can also deploy the interagency cooperation, international cooperation too. So if we fight corruption by adopting best practices model of fighting corruption, then it won't be, the focus will not just be on fighting corruption at the federal level alone. It will be fighting corruption at all levels. And then it also starts from the home. It starts from the family. It starts from our schools, our institutions, everything. We need to begin to put in place preventive mechanisms in order to combat this menace.
Yeah, just one last thing. Sounds like you're asking us to put anti-corruption studies in our schools.
Of course, of course, of course.
Because I heard that one of the monarchs spoke at the event and was talking about family values and all those things.
Yes.
Where did we lose it, and how do we bring all of that back?
I think we lost it because society now begins to celebrate wealth without questioning its origin. People no longer care whether what they care about is if you jump into sudden wealth. The color of money. People no longer care about the color of money or how dirty the money is, so long as the money is available to be showcased. And this orientation must change. I heard the Minister of Information talk of a new value system for the country. It's part of it. It's not just for the anti-graft agencies alone. The media must key into this. The civil society must key into this anti-corruption agenda. And governments at all levels too must key into the anti-corruption agenda. Absolutely. It's a collective.
Well, absolutely, most certainly endeavor. A conversation that cannot end in one program or even in 10, so long as there is life in our nostrils. Thank you so much for your time and your perspectives this morning. Shitu is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Once again, we appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Close the program this morning with some of your own contribution to it. Festus Akimboye, we're talking about the National Values Charter says the new Nigeria Values Charter can only achieve its objectives when our political leaders show commitment to the charter by being a responsible leader, by raising employment opportunities for our teeming young people, by committing to the health and well-being of all Nigerians, and by making employment opportunities accessible equally. Change must begin with the president himself. That's from Festus Akimboye.
All right, well,
I have this one from Imono Enakena. He says, where's patriotism and reorientation when our federal government and its federating units deployed our limited effects to import over 1,500 SUVs for federal agencies from local government upwards was deployed to buy locally produced vehicles from innocent motors or even patronize the locally assembled vehicles? It would have made an impact to curb the scarcity of FX and this unprecedented devaluation of the Naira. It is not too late to finally prioritize the allocation of FX to stem it being hoarded by CBN and its affiliates. Imono Enakena.
It was the price of rice as a Naira per bag. And petrol to 100 Naira per liter. Okay. I hope a chuckle. Well, there you go. That is the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Now, Taigbe. Bye-bye.
And I'm Ayo Makinde asking you to have an amazing and a fulfilling day. God bless Nigeria.
Stay connected to the world with Channels TV Podcast and get all the trending stories. Simply log on to channelstv.com, click on podcast, select the program of your choice, and listen. Our podcast is available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Tap the expertise you trust. Touch the stories that touch you. Anytime, anywhere.